Mr. Sixit Bhatta, welcome to Take Conclave 2020, and the space is yours.
Good morning. It's good afternoon, rather. Thank you for the invitation. Even though I'm not very fond of using Zoom in conferences, because I feel that there's a kind of a disconnect that happens with the rest of the world. May I know how many people are here right now?
Yeah, so there are a total of 111 participants right now.
Okay, great. So congratulations for arranging this conference, and I'm supposed to speak to you about the market of IT services. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when we talk about the market of IT services, if you look at the education in Nepal, we've always been chasing the market in terms of do we find enough places where we can sell our product to having a group of coders who would code and create products and services. I personally feel, if you want to do that market is always there. I mean, it's not only in Nepal. I think with the kind of skill sets that we have, we can create products and services that can be also sold outside of Nepal, and we've seen many companies that are doing that. But I think at the same time, it's very important to broaden the scope of innovation. And unfortunately, I think that's lacking. So I would just not spend much of a time, and maybe I'll speak for 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'd like to take your question and answers for next 5-10 minutes. But let me just give you a perspective. You all are engineering students, right? Is that correct?
So most of us are IT students. कोही चाहिँ हाम्रो +2 students र SE graduates पनि हुनुहुन्छ. So majority IT students.
So say for example, I did my engineering myself from Kathmandu University a long time ago, and I've always also met with a lot of people who go abroad and go to schools. Some go to very good schools, and if you look at the curriculum and the educational materials that you learn, whether you are in Kathmandu University or MIT, you'd find that the textbooks and the curriculum that you learn is almost the same, if not the same, right? You do a certain integration, the result is the same. You do a certain calculation. Everywhere around the world, you do the same thing in every school or every college. But if I were to tell a student at Kathmandu University to solve a problem of sending a person to Mars, it is very likely that a student from here would say that, oh, we don't have a rocket, we need someone else to build a rocket, and then we can think of sending people to Mars. While in MIT or Stanford outside, they would start by building a rocket, right? So what I have noticed is that even though our curriculum is good, our educational institute teach the same course, every programmer or coder has the same skills. I think the difference between people who live in Silicon Valley to the people who live in Kathmandu Valley is not about how much of the skills they have or what they know. The difference is always on the level of optimism, where a person from Silicon Valley or MIT thinks that he or she can innovate, can change the world, can produce products and services that can change the face of humanity. while a person sitting in a school in Kathmandu, even though they have the same skills, do not have the same kind of culture, do not have the same oomph, they do not have the same courage to change. So I think a lot of things that young students, coders, programmers, students need to understand is it is not about what you learn in the school or what skills that you have. I think it's more importantly, it is about the kind of culture of innovation, the culture of optimism, the culture of thinking that you can make things happen. That is important, and being able to change the world and being very optimistic about the future. I think that is important. So it is not about what market we have or what we do. I think it's more to do about the kind of culture that you want to imbibe, and that culture can only come in if you reward people with failures. Right? You cannot come up with something new and exciting until you fail, until you allow people to learn and unlearn. Those things are important. So I'm not giving you a kind of a, I think people will come and say नेपालमा यस्तो market छ यस्तो product develop गर्नुपर्छ उस्तो develop गर्नुपर्छ, all that things, many people will come and tell you. So the only thing that I want to tell you, and I would like to close it and wrap it up here and take your question and answers for next 10 minutes is that we need to imbibe the culture of optimism, that we can make things happen. I think that's the only difference that we have compared to people from other parts of the world who come up with great innovations. Yeah, so that's I like to make it more interactive. So let's do question and answers if that's fine.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. So before we have received a couple of questions in the chat, and I'd like to request everybody to put in the questions in the chat if you have any. So question answer ma proceed गर्नुभन्दा अगाडि चाहिँ I've listed a few points that you just said right now, and your level of optimism को कुरा गर्नुभयो, right? So difference between Silicon Valley and people in Kathmandu Valley भनेर भन्नुभयो. So it's the factor that people believe that they can create something and create something that can impact in the world, right? And now you also talked about like काठमाडौँमा यस्तो छैन भने अब चाहिँ के गर्न सकिन्छ त? सो त्यसरी त्यो अब काठमाडौँमा अथवा हाम्रो नेपालमा यो टाइपको त छैन, तर अब के गर्न सकिन्छ भन्ने कुरा पनि थोरै चाहिँ राख्नुभयो तपाईँले. And I really liked that you're rewarding people for failures भन्नुभयो नि. So rewarding people for failures को कुरा पनि मलाई एकदमै मन पर्यो कि. So if you could like elaborate त्यो अब यहाँ काठमाडौँमा भएर चाहिँ अब हामीले के गर्न सकिन्छ, like to create an environment where people believe that they can create something to impact the world. काठमाडौँमा त्यो कल्चर हामी कसरी ल्याउन सकिन्छ होला नेपालमा? Sixit, you're muted right now, so I'd like to request you to unmute yourself. Give me a second. Yes.
So this is not something that can happen from outside. This needs to happen from ourselves. हैन किनभने यसको सर्टकट छैन कि आजको भोलि म एकदमै त्यस्तो बनाउँछु भने it doesn't have a shortcut. In order to create that culture, you need to be able to aim at the star, aim at the moon, take moonshots, and fail and try it again. Be very perseverant. You need to learn, you need to research. Unfortunately, we don't build up that culture of reading, culture of research. We kind of copy and follow. There's so many 100,000 things to do, so we don't normally do those things. Yeah. I think it comes from within, inside. Okay. It's your character.
Okay, so rather than external forces, भन्दा पनि intrinsic तरिकाले चाहिँ आउनु पर्यो भन्ने कुरा गर्नुभयो हैन तपाईले?
Exactly.
All right. So a more specific question, हजुरले सर यो Tootle के बारेमा चाहिँ question आएको छ. So what is the future of Tootle अथवा upcoming exciting projects भनेर question आएको छ.
I don't know. I think we do not know as of now because the situation is pretty unfriendly to anything that we do because of COVID. The mobility is restricted, so I'm sure we're still thinking of that. We'll let you know very soon.
Okay, that's fine. So अर्को एउटा स्पेसिफिक क्वेसन आएको छ है. So I'm not sure if you will be able to answer this, but beginning of Tootle चाहिँ सुरु गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ बिजनेस मोडल चाहिँ कस्तो थियो भनेर क्वेसन आएको छ.
Beginning गर्दाखेरि जस्तो business model थियो अहिले पनि त्यही नै हो है. So when you begin any entrepreneurial venture, before you think of business model, you need to think of changing people's behavior, right? So when we started our journey back in 2016, it was not about the business model, because business model is this very simple part of it. The biggest challenge is to change human behavior to taking and giving a ride on a motorcycle, which never existed before. So more than business model, entrepreneurship is about changing human behavior. It's not just about solving problems, right? You need to change people's behavior. So you need to think from that behavioral perspective.
Okay, that's amazing. So yeah, so तपाईँले यो बिहेभियरल चेन्जको कुरा चाहिँ मैले वान अफ यु इन्टरभ्युजमा पहिला पनि सुनेको थिएँ होइन, एन्ड द फ्याक्ट त्यो टपिक इन्टायरली इज भेरी फेसिनेटिङ टु मी. सो थ्याङ्क यू फर हाइलाइटिङ अन द्याट एज वेल. So could you elaborate on what has been the biggest challenge at Tootle, your entire process?
I mean, when it comes to doing a startup or technology or anything new, it's actually the same challenge that happens over the years. But you need to deal with that. So if you look at the early days, the biggest challenge was to convince your team that something of this kind is possible.
Right.
And once the team is convinced, they get to work and come up with a product and technology, then you start convincing the customers that this is possible, which takes a lot of time and effort, because that's where the business model starts and the behavior change starts. And moving on, then you need to convince the government and the unions. So people have resistance to change. And if you're doing something new, you're bringing about the change. And I think the biggest challenge of any venture that dwells on innovation and changing human behavior is to convince a group of people, different group of people at different times. Yeah, I think that's the challenge at the end, at the core of it.
Okay, thank you so much for your answer. So, अर्को question चाहिँ, I think this is a fun question, right? So, do you think that Tootle helps in reducing traffic in Kathmandu, or it increases it even more?
Of course, I mean, sharing economy at any given time reduces the number of vehicles on the streets. There is no denying. Sharing of rides, sharing of vehicles of any kind reduces the number of vehicles. It's an empirical fact. I don't need to justify that. It's well researched throughout the world.
Okay, amazing. So अर्को एउटा पोइन्ट चाहिँ यो रिवार्डिङ द फेलियर्स भन्ने पोइन्ट चाहिँ अघि आएको थियो. सो यसको लागि पनि हामी वे फरवर्ड के हुनसक्छ, लाइक यो चाहिँ मैले धेरै देख्दिनँ क्या अहिले हाम्रो सोसाइटीमा, अनि यहाँ च्याटमा पनि त्यही आइरहेको छ एउटा कन्सर्न चाहिँ. सो कसरी यो इस्टाब्लिस गर्न सकिन्छ होला हामीले रिवार्डिङ फेलियर्स?
It depends on us. It depends on people. It depends on people around you. It depends on, because if you don't fail, you don't try anything. You don't get anything new unless you are willing to fail.
Okay.
Unless you're risk taking. हाम्रो सोसाइटीमा त्यो रिस्क टेकिङ कति छ भन्ने कुरा नै अब त्यसमा भन्नुपर्छ.
Okay. Very interesting. So, अर्को question which is very relevant to the current time भन्छु मैले चाहिँ. So, COVID-19 को time has been challenging होइन, एकदमै challenging भएको छ धेरै ठाउँमा. But एउटा entrepreneur को perspective बाट हेर्दाखेरि this also can be seen as opportunity, like because everything is changing, नयाँ opportunity create भइरहेछ, right? सो जेनरली पनि कस्तो अपर्च्युनिटीहरू चाहिँ अब क्रिएट गराइरहेछ कोभिड-19 ले, र स्पेसिफिकली तपाईँको टुटलमा चाहिँ यसले अपर्च्युनिटी क्रिएट गराइरहेछ कि अझ गाह्रो गराइरहेछ? सो जेनरली एन्टरप्रेन्योरशिप एन्ड स्पेसिफिकली
generally entrepreneurship, because this COVID is here to stay, but it's not here to stay for a decade or 5 years. It's going to be here, say, for 1 year. So it is about survival. So I think any innovation can, अहिलेको in COVID situation, entrepreneur as such, like it can help people change certain behaviors. कुनै behavior लाई offline बाट online लिएर जान सक्छ होला payment हरुको कुरामा हैन कति ठाउँमा contact human contact हुने behavior लाई चाहिँ it can help a new behavior to come in. But when it comes to Tootle, I think it dwells on human contact, on having people come together and mobility. So it is affecting us. So I don't see at this, because we deal with helping people move around. So that is not there. So it's kind of creating some kind of a challenge. Yeah.
Okay, so यहाँ पहिला आएकै कुरामा चाहिँ अझ थोरै क्ल्यारिफिकेसन खोज्ने टाइपको एउटा क्वेसन आएको छ क्या लेटेस्ट. सो इट इज ट्रु द्याट वी आर ल्याकिङ रिसर्चेबल एजुकेसन, रिसर्च बेस्ड एजुकेसन चाहिँ छैन. बट अनलेस एन्ड अन्टिल आवर करिकुलम सिस्टम चेन्जेस इट इज नट गोइङ टु चेन्ज आवर कन्ट्री. सो अप्टिमिस्टिक हुँदाखेरि हामी फ्यु पिपलको चाहिँ माइन्डसेट चेन्ज होला होइन, तर लार्जर स्कोपमा हेर्दा इन्टायर युथ पपुलेसन हेर्दा चाहिँ कसरी इम्प्याक्ट ल्याउन सकिन्छ होला?
Youth population, it has nothing to do with the curriculum. अहिले जतिजना हाम्रो 111-12 जना हुनुहुन्छ हैन, how often do you read anything? Do you pick up a book? How often do you read? You need to ask that question to yourself. How much you research? How much are you curious? So it has nothing to do with the curriculum. It has to do with you. I mean, do you read stuff? It could be a fiction, it could be a novel, it could be a science book, it could be anything. How much effort and time you spend in ideas? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, very, very interesting perspective. So how I see it is, एकदम यो करिकुलममा फिक्सेटेड छौँ अनि हाम्रो करिकुलम नै कसरी डिजाइन गरिएको छ भने यु हेभ टु पुट सो मच एफर्ट होइन, त्यही ठाउँमा एफर्ट लाउनुपर्छ, बाहिर धेरै एक्सप्लोर गर्न पनि पाइरा हुँदैन कि. सो दिस आइडिया अफ एक्सप्लोरिङ योर सेल्फ, गेनिङ नलेज आउटसाइड द बक्स भनौँ न. सो यो कुरा इज भेरी फेसिनेटिङ एन्ड आई थिङ्क द्याट दिस इज अ भेरी बिग टेक अवे टु द इन्टायर 131 अडियन्सेस टुडे. सो अर्को एउटा आई थिङ्क यो क्वेसन चाहिँ मैले यहाँ राख्न चाहिहालेँ. आई बिलिभ वी हेभ 3 more minutes, राइट? सो यो अस्ति गभर्मेन्ट ब्यानको कुरा चाहिँ एकदमै हाइपमा आएको थियो होइन, रिगार्डिङ राइट सेयरिङ. सो यो कुरा चाहिँ कसरी ट्याकल गर्नुभयो भन्ने क्वेसन छ.
So त्यो कुरामा अब there have been many things that happened, and I will not be able to answer you each and everything. We went to the court, and the Honorable High Court has passed a decision to allow our services to run.
Right. So okay, अर्को एउटा इन्ट्रेस्टिङ क्वेसन. सो राइट सेयरिङ एपको अब पायोनियरको रूपमा अथवा सुरुमा त तपाईँहरूले गर्नुभयो होइन, बट नाउ देयर इज अ लट अफ कम्पिटिटर्स भनौँ न. सो पठाउ छ एन्ड यो 4 भेहिकल्सकोहरू पनि धेरै आइरहेको छ. सो यस्तो बेलामा वाट आर यर स्ट्राटेजिज टु स्ट्यान्ड आउट फ्रम द क्राउड? अनि अझ जेनरली रिलेट गर्दा अलरेडी एक्जिस्टिङ आइडियाजहरूमा पनि नयाँ हामीहरू युथहरूले चाहिँ सुरु गर्दा कसरी चाहिँ स्ट्यान्ड आउट गर्न सकिन्छ होला?
सबभन्दा ठुलो कुरो अब त्यो कतिवटा 12-15 कतिवटा आउँदैछ होइन, बट पिपल डोन्ट अन्डरस्ट्यान्ड द टेक्निकलिटिज एन्ड द डिफिकल्टिज अफ रनिङ द बिजनेस. You need to understand that it's not just the app, it's about the entire knowledge that goes inside building a platform of ride sharing. The app बाट हुने भयो जस्तै भनौँ न, if you're opening a shoe company, making a shoe and selling a shoe is not a big deal. But when you have to sell that shoes to billions of people at the same time at different locations throughout the world, that is the complexity. No, Nike जस्तो जुत्ता त कतिजनाले पनि बनाउँछ होला नि हैन. So it's not about making a shoe or an app, it's about how that app runs and how you can scale that platform. So I think it's the more important thing as a pioneer is we have our experience and we've learned a lot of lessons last 4 years, and therefore we are working on improving our services at scale. Right? एउटा बर्गर बनाउनु र म्याकडोनल्ड बनाउनुमा फरक छ नि.
Right, amazing. So I'd like to thank you very much. हाम्रो टाइम चाहिँ ठ्याक्कै एन्डमा आएको छ. I knew that हजुरले चाहिँ ठ्याक्कै स्ट्रिक्टली टाइममा एन्ड गरौँ भन्ने रिक्वेस्ट गर्नुभएको थियो. So I will be closing this space here, and I would like to express gratitude towards you because आफ्नो सुरुको पार्ट छोटो राख्नुभयो अनि बढी इन्टरेक्टिभ बनाउन खोज्नुभयो. A lot of questions, interaction चाहिँ हामीले गर्न पायौँ, and very insightful. Like हामीले यो entire Tech Conclave 2020, this is a 3-day event as a last day हो, र प्रिभियस डेजहरुमा नआएको इन्साइट्सहरु चाहिँ हामीले पाउन सकेको छौँ अहिलेको सेसनमा. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.